Briana Aldridge joined by Isaiah Stanback for another update on this Cowboys coaching search, which hasn't got a lot of movement, but they have announced they are interviewing Brian Schottenheimer for the second interview, the only candidate so far to have the second interview. What does that say to you that they're moving with this rather quickly?
You know what? I'm not sure how much that insight that necessarily gives. I know it's somebody that's been in the building, somebody that they're comfortable and confident with. He's very experienced. He's very well respected and regarded around the league. I think that obviously in the position that he was in, he was given the title of OC, even though we know that he wasn't necessarily one calling the plays. So I think that, I think they're looking at him for offensive coordinator, but the word out of the building obviously is that they're looking at him for a head coach. So the second interview, it might have been broken up into two different segments. You might have been looking at him as strictly an offensive coordinator. Can you handle that role solely by yourself, apart from McCarthy? And then, okay, now let's look at him as a head coach. And is that something that we can look at? Can you now lead other men? Can you lead other coaches? What is your methodology? What is all the things that we need to know about you and being able to run an organization? Can you do that? So I honestly think, from my perspective, that those were two different interviews broken up into two different segments for two different roles.
Do you think if this happens to go another way and he does interview and get the head coaching position, that he's going to be the play caller? Do you think if he were to get the head coaching position, that comes with stipulations where, you know, you're going to have the head honcho job, but we're going to have someone come in and take over play calling?
Yeah, I would believe that he would be the play caller, but I mean, nobody truly knows. What I do believe is I think that the Cowboys are trying to figure out a way to bring in new leadership while maintaining some form of consistency for the highest paid player in the league, which is Dak Prescott. They don't want to just turn the whole page over and make him have to learn a completely new system. I get that, right? There's no progress there. Now you're asking him to go back and spend the whole offseason learning somebody else's system. So they're trying to have some form of consistency there, and I think that's why they're taking a deeper look, but they have to have their options. They have to have their eyes open for other options as well. But by choosing another option outside of Schottenheimer, by choosing another option outside of Kellen Moore, you're looking at literally turning over the entire program, and now Dak has to learn an entirely different system.
Well, you brought up his name, Kellen Moore. Last time we spoke, he had not had an interview. He has now. What makes sense about that just interview when you just look at it, why they decided to bring him in? Familiarity.
I think that they know who Kellen Moore is as a coach. They know who he is as a leader. They obviously know who he is as a play caller. They know who he is as a player. So all those things that make you feel good inside as the Joneses, you're comfortable with Kellen Moore. Now the question, still is hanging above his head, is he a leader? We know you're a good play caller. We know you as a player. We know you have a relationship with Dak. We know that you've ran a system that Dak would be comfortable with. The language is important when it comes to offensive systems. So it's good for Dak, but is it good for the rest of the team? And that's the difference between being a really good play caller and being somebody who has to lead the entire organization. I'm not sure that you know what you're going to get out of Kellen Moore from that regard. I still, even as an offensive play caller, you don't know who Kellen Moore truly is. It seems like he's been more of a chameleon. So the one thing that I truly know about Kellen Moore is that he's adaptable. But that's the only thing that I personally can stand true on in regards to Kellen Moore.
Now, I got to ask, because it's been floating around, even though he hasn't had an interview or been formally requested, but Jason Witten has been a hot topic, maybe not even as the head coach, but definitely someone who could be, obviously very well liked by Jerry Jones. Does that move make sense to reel him in and give him that experience at the NFL level as a coach?
I think either as an assistant position coach to learn and get that experience at the NFL level, I don't foresee him coming in and getting the position coach wholly, and I definitely don't see him coming in and being a head coach. Right? I think there's 0% on that. But I do believe that he could potentially come in, depending on whatever regime comes in here, and be an assistant coach. Right? For the Dallas Cowboys, they have been very spoiled by their previous tight ends coach, and that is Lunda Wells. He is one of the most consistent coaches, one of the best position coaches in the league, and everybody who's come through that tight end room has gotten better. I don't see them coming in, if Lunda was to stay with the new regime, and them bumping him out of the way. All he's done is turn out Pro Bowlers at that position in that room. But I could see Jason Witten coming on, possibly if Lunda was to stay, and being an assistant to Lunda, learning how things run at this level, and then potentially being the guy to fulfill that role, because he was a great player. He will be a Hall of Famer. right? And I think he's been a leader of men. I've been in the locker room with him personally, so I can speak from that perspective. But from a coaching standpoint, we only know him as a high school coach.
And looking overall, like all the vacancies, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn finding their teams, even though the Cowboys officially didn't, put in those requests, how does that shape up what's happening around the league and putting the pressure on the Cowboys?
Yeah, I think coming into this, obviously this coaching cycle, you knew who the two top candidates were going to be. It was going to be Ben Johnson, and it was going to be Aaron Glenn. And I think a lot of the teams were kind of positioning themselves as at a play at both of those guys. And once both of those guys had made their decision, it was going to be a rat's race to see who can get plucked first. So now, obviously, Ben Johnson goes to Chicago, Aaron Glenn goes to the Jets, and now you have the Saints, now you have the Jaguars, now you have the Raiders, and now you have the Cowboys, who are all going to be vying for coaches from the same pool. So if you're those coaches, you're now entertaining whoever calls first, you're now entertaining whatever system works best for you, and you're entertaining whoever cuts the biggest check. So there's going to be a lot more competition now, and I think it's going to happen very quickly for all these coaches. You're going to start seeing roles get fulfilled very quickly, and you're going to start seeing position coaches, you're going to start seeing coordinator positions go as well. So the time is ticking.
And speaking of position coaches, Coach Bones is off to Tennessee. That's the reaction to most people because he was so beloved in the locker room, well respected by, that was a player's coach through and through. Does that kind of start to show how different this team is shaping to be already?
Losing Bones Fossil is huge, and I'm not sure that people understand the gravity of that loss. Without Bones Fossil, there's no Cavante Turpin. Without Bones Fossil, there's no Brandon Aubrey. He is somebody who went out and personally sought out these guys, scouting them in the crowd as a fan, watching them, and then coming back to the scouting department and say, yeah, we need to bring these guys into the system. So you don't have those Pro Bowlers. You don't have Brian Anger as your Pro Bowler. 3 out of the 4 positions that he's responsible for, punter, kicker, return man, and long snapper, everybody has gone to the Pro Bowl except for the long snapper. That's all Bones Fossil. So now he's out that room, and now you have to search for a new special teams coach. It doesn't get that third of the game doesn't get as much respect as it should, but Cowboys Nation should understand how much of an impact that role has on this team because that was the most consistent aspect of the Cowboys in 2024.
When you look at what has happened thus far, in your opinion, what is the traits of the top candidate the Cowboys should be looking for right now?
I think you need somebody who come in who's going to be able to establish a culture. Number one, you hear so much about the star and the brand, and yeah, that's for sure a thing, but you need somebody who has a culture that comes with them. I don't think that's one aspect that you can gamble on and hope that somebody is going to establish or bring or kind of, create at some point in time. You need to know that, hey, are they a disciplinarian? Do they have the command of other men? Do they have the respect of the other coaches? Can they come in and make sure that Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons are all going to look up to that individual, or are they going to be looking at them on the same playing field? So I think they need to be able to have that respect and command, number one, of the locker room and of the organization. They have to be able to lead men, right? Not just the players, but they have to lead the coaches. Their number one job of the head coach is to coach the coaches. People always think that is to coach the players. No. They coach the coaches, and the coaches coach the players. So that's number 2 for me. And I think they need to have a personality that can handle everything that comes with the star. I think they have to be able to handle the media. I think they need to be able to diffuse situations, not be able to disclose certain things, but still be accessible. I think they need to have some personality. I don't think that you can have a dry, quiet coach as a head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. So those are all characteristics that I think that the new coach needs to embody, and I don't think that you're going to get that out of a new head coach in the NFL. I think it's probably going to be somebody who's been a head coach in the past.
And looking at what's happening right now, Eagles, Commanders, they're still playing. Just let that sink in there. Do you think the reality of that situation, maybe Jerry looks at this and sees this is not going to be the same division?
I think he understands that. I think he understands that the coordinators, right? You have Dan Quinn, who was your defensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, who was your offensive coordinator. Both of those guys were on your staff at the same time. So I think he understands the weight of that. I think he fully understands how well respected and regarded those guys are and what they bring. And yeah, the division is not the same. The Washington Commanders are not what they once were. They have new leadership in terms of ownership. They have new leadership in terms of a general manager. They have the most money and cap space going into next year, and they're already in the division championship. There's some big problems that the Cowboys have going forward in terms of competition, and we know the Philadelphia Eagles always fill out their roster. So yeah, you have two very viable opponents out of the three that are in your division. You're gonna have to put your big boy shoes on and get ready to handle that.
Even though it's a little bit of a mess, a lot of uncertainty, when you're looking at some of the other vacancies for the coaching staffs, if you were appealed to be a head coach, we'll just put that out there. Just putting into perspective, though, this is still somewhere where you have a high caliber quarterback, one of the best receivers in the league. You're hoping to make this deal with Micah Parsons happen. Pro Bowlers galore on this team still. Is this still a job that is, when you look at the other teams, it's kind of top tier still?
Yeah, I think for the available positions, I think this team is positioned best to win now. I truly believe that. But I think that the hesitation, one is that you're probably not going to get paid what you can get paid somewhere else, because historically the Joneses have been tight with their pockets. I think that's one of the main reasons why they did not, from our knowledge, did not pursue Ben Johnson, because of the money that he was going to be requesting. So they're always a lot of budgetary restrictions there. I also think that the weight of the star and everything that you have to deal with in terms of the relationship as a head coach and how much power that you have along with the general manager / owner, right? That relationship has to be tight knit. You have to be able to fully walk hand in hip with that individual and be able to make collective decisions. You don't want there to be resistance there. So I think that might play a big part into who is willing to come in and take on this amazing roster that you have. Top three quarterback, top three receiver, top three defensive end. Like, you have top three talent all over the board. This is the best roster out of the available head coaching jobs, but you have to be able to handle the relationship aspect in terms of the people who make the decisions.
Only time will tell. You think they're going to make a decision here? What day is it? We're in the middle of the week. You think they're going to end the week on a strong note?
I would like to see that happen. I don't know that the Cowboys would do that, because I don't think that he's on the timeline that is as realistic as the real timeline. However, you're going to start seeing a lot of coaches get plucked here relatively soon. Now that those two top dogs are gone, these coaches are not going to wait around for that phone call. They're going to start taking the roles that are available to them.
It's going to be a fun ride from here. Thanks for joining me. For Briana Aldridge, for Isaiah Stanback.